You can now stream the forbidden documentary Occult Louisiana free on Tubi TV, which is available on Fire Stick, Roku, iOS, and Android. Hello friends, we are in a troubling time when it comes to misinformation. Here at Forbidden Knowledge News, I've always taken an unbiased, open-minded, and responsible approach to presenting my own theories, and the views of our guests do not reflect that of my own. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and any information presented during this show is a live-action role-play scenario. Conspiracies are definitely fun to discuss in a responsible way. All that being said, enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Mark Weinstein. First, a couple of announcements. Be sure to watch the Forbidden documentary Occult Louisiana. It's available on Tubi, Roku channel, and multiple streaming platforms. It is a great way to help support Forbidden Knowledge News and help us produce our upcoming films. You can also help by getting a Rokfin premium membership, rokfin.com/FKN Plus, and you'll get access to all of our premium content. Also, be sure to download our audio podcast through Spreaker if you listen through any audio platform. We are booking guests for January. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome Mark Weinstein. He is a world-renowned tech entrepreneur, contemporary thought leader, privacy expert, and one of the visionary inventors of social networking. His adventure in social media has lasted over 25 years through 3 award-winning personal social media platforms enjoyed by millions of members worldwide. Mark, welcome. How you doing?
Hey, Chris, I'm doing great. This is such an important topic, and so it's great to be on the show. It's great to have everybody who's going to be watching and listening. I'm very excited to be here with you.
I'm very excited to have you, and like you said, this is definitely a very important and timely topic. We're going to talk about the dark reality of surveillance capitalism, and you call this the greatest socio-economic experiment in human history. And we're currently in an era of constant tracking, surveillance, analysis, even monetization, and there's most likely several layers that go beyond my limited understanding of this technology. But I'm looking forward to hearing your insights about the state of technocracy and maybe even get some possible solutions and help people understand where we're at. Before we do, this is your first time on. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and what led you to where you're at.
Well, first of all, everybody, if you're watching, I have a new book out called Restoring Our Sanity Online, a Revolutionary Social Framework. Now, for context, and doubling down on the intro, it's endorsed by Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who many of you know is the inventor of the World Wide Web. There's not 10, there's not 5, there's not 2, there's 1. It's Sir Tim. He's advised me for 14 years. He's a friend. The book is also endorsed by Woz, Steve Wozniak. Now, I know a bunch of you have heard Woz's name many times. Also been advising me for a long time. Great guy, great human being. So that's what I've been up to recently. Now, if we dial it back, as one of the inventors of social media, truly everybody, one of the inventors, I think there's probably 100 of us around the world who thought of the idea around the same time in the 90s. If you weren't born in the 90s, that's okay. But a bunch of us lived through Web 1 also. So, I started Web 1. I built Super Family and Super Friends. They were PC Magazine top 100 sites 3 years in a row in Web 1. And then, Web 1 was beautiful because when we look at where does social media come from? Well, first of all, we called them community portals in the 90s. And the whole idea was email was already, look, we all had email in the 90s, especially in the late 90s, but email was already ghastly in the 90s. It's just like it is today. It's one-dimensional. You don't really know what the person is thinking. You can't tap into their emotions. All you're doing is reading the flat word, and then you're making all the interpretations, and we're often interpreting emails incorrectly, particularly the nuance. So it was the same thing in the 90s. The email is exactly the same. Can you believe that? With all the advances in technology, 30 years of email. So a bunch of us, came up with this idea. We all started different companies around the world. It's called the 100th Monkey Effect, where the idea plugs into humanity at the same time in different places where we have no connection to each other. And so the idea was, let's connect the earth. Let's connect with our family and friends and with like-minded people because we could all live and work wherever we wanted to at that point also. So let's use technology to stay better connected, with live video, with photo albums, with, sticky notes on a refrigerator, with all kinds of great stuff. And so, social media was born. That's Web 1. There was no surveillance capitalism, everybody. This is actually what leads to it. Because Web 1 was what was called the new economy. It was a revenue model that wasn't quite developed. And all that investors cared about in Web 1 is that you got users. And we called them eyeballs then. We didn't call them users. We just called them eyeballs. So, if you could get eyeballs, then you were successful. And so by that measure, I was very successful. Many companies were. Because the new economy was get your customers, your eyeballs, and then we'll figure out how to monetize them. So that's what happened. And so there we are in Web 1, and everybody was doing the right, the people that were successful, like I was, we were doing it great. All of a sudden, if you've ever read about Web 1 or lived through it, the bubble burst. They call it the bubble bursting. And in the early 2001, the bubble burst. And there was investing is always emotional. And all of a sudden, there were the cynics who won. And they were like, wait a minute, there's no revenue. None of these companies have revenue. And it was like, yeah, we don't have revenue because we're doing exactly the mandate of our investors. Get your customers, get them lined up, and then we'll invent monetization mechanisms that are effective for those customers. You got to first get them, make sure they love what you're doing. They love the service. But investors panicked. There was a stampede to the door. And this is why literally thousands of companies went out of business over just a few months period. Thousands of companies. Because we didn't have revenue. And if investors stopped writing checks, we couldn't fund our operations. End of Web 1. Web 2 is born shortly thereafter, and Web 2 is really where Google comes into existence in a big way. Meta Facebook starts around 2004. MySpace is in the early 2000s. And Google and Facebook start to discover something in that 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9 era that we have so much data. Because the ad models then were very straightforward, just like throwing ads at people without any kind of targeting. All of a sudden, they're like, oh, wait a minute. I know that Mark's got to get dog food. He's going to the store. I just saw him write that, or I heard it, before mobile phones were really listening. But they were watching where you are, who you're talking to, what you're saying in real time. The algorithms were being engineered as quickly as possible so that they could collect the data, aggregate a data packet on you, and then target and manipulate your thoughts, your purchases, your business decisions. Now, here's the strange thing, Chris, and everybody. At first, a bunch of people thought it was cool because it had never been done before, right? So it's like, oh, wow. Well, they know, that I'm not feeling so hot. And so they know I need to go to, Walgreens and get some medicine, or, they know I need to go to the pet store and get some dog food. They know I'm out. So, and there's the ad right there. There's a coupon. How cool is that? So the coolness lasted for just a little while. And for many of us, we thought it was creepy immediately. And in fact, if you fast forward to 2012, the day before Facebook went public, I was interviewed on Fox Business. I was the one guy they could find who said, "This is creepy." And I said it. I said, guys, because that's, it's like there's something wrong here. If I write, I put a post, guys, I got to go to the store. I got to get some dog food. Then in 10 seconds, I have dog food ads. This is creepy. This is like Big Brother. There's a creep watching right over my shoulder, and I can't see that creep. So I can't actually articulate anything about that creep, but it's creepy. And this actually is why it works so well, Chris. This is surveillance capitalism, everybody. This is how it started. This is how it perpetuates today. When you can't see the creep, it's really hard to articulate what's happening, get your arms around it, and it's just weird. So, fast forward, what we have today, and now we've had for many years. First of all, in 2010, Mark Zuckerberg stated in an interview at the Crunchy Awards in San Francisco, he said privacy is a social norm of the past. There's headlines that attest that. By the way, everybody, you can fact check everything that I say. Even in the book, I've got over 400 footnotes with the source of anything that I'm stating, and all credible sources. So anyway, Zuckerberg says this in 2010. I had been out for a while. I was watching the industry. My jaw dropped. I watched his interview and I was like, oh my God, this is not why we invented what had become social networking. We invented social networking so that we could make the world a more compassionate, loving place, so we could stay connected. We could use technology to better stay in touch with our family and our friends and our loved ones and find like-minded people and really, get this world in a better situation. We didn't invent social media so people could become manipulated and targeted, and their opinions could be, affected, and their purchase decisions. That wasn't the point. So anyway, fast forward, I have a TED Talk if everybody wants to watch. It's a 9-minute. I did it in 2020 on the rise of surveillance capitalism, purposely short because we don't have as much time to, take a break and watch things. But, everything that I do is entertaining. So whether you're watching my TED Talk, whether you're reading this book, I have a sense of humor. So you're going to chuckle all the way through as you read the stories, hear the stories, from in the trenches. And then, yes, Chris, absolutely, we'll talk about how do we fix this mess?
Yeah. First, before we get to that, let's bring the attention to what you believe to be some of the most dangerous aspects of this. Not only has this surveillance capitalism crept in to our society in a sense that it's selling to us, it's a marketing tool, but there are deeper layers. The algorithms affect people's decisions when it comes to politics. It's affecting younger people's mental health. And there's this layer of deception that is covering our reality based on the technology that we're interacting with. We're stuck in echo chambers. The algorithm is determining what people are thinking, where we're going, and where society is headed as a whole. How advanced are these algorithms, and what do you think the end goal is for all of this?
Wow, that's and it's amazing we can stay calm with the way that you just presented that bundle of questions. So everybody, I came back in Web 2, and I started a beta project. This is how I got to be friends with Tim Berners-Lee. Unbeknownst to me in the beta project in the early 2010s, 11, 12, 13, 14, Sir Tim was providing feedback as one of our beta users and not telling us who he was. But it was really spectacular as I learned that he was, because, it's like the idea is, how about a privacy-centric social media company? And that I built a company that today is known as MeWe, M-E-W-E. Now, I left MeWe about 3 years ago to write the book. Meta had interfered, Meta Facebook had interfered very significantly, according to our research. And I realized that the problem is bigger than one company. So, but MeWe still exists. Just an FYI, I came back in Web 2, I built this great company. We got 20 million users, no advertising. Fascinating privacy bill of rights, no targeted material, no newsline, jigging around, all that stuff, newslines in timeline order, no boosted content, no ads, etc. Beautiful. Freemium model. The idea was people love what's free, and then you can then offer them extra features. So our revenue model started to work very well in 2019, 20, and 21. Here's the thing. There is a huge data ecosystem. Another one of these things that we can't see, feel, touch, hear, smell, taste, anything, right? But it's there. And so the proverbial they, and they is the government, the social media companies, the advertisers, the marketers, the nefarious governments, anybody who wants to manipulate and target your opinions, your votes, your purchase decisions has your data. And in the case of TikTok, it's documented that biometric data, Americans' biometric data, your thumbprint, your eye, whatever you're using to log in, that's being fed right to the Chinese government. Now, your biometric data doesn't change. So if somebody has your fingerprint, they have it forever. If they have your eye, they have it forever. If they have any biometric of yours, it's forever. It doesn't change during your lifetime. So if you're a 13-year-old kid and TikTok now has a biometric data on you, guess what? They have it until, you're dead. So just putting it in perspective there. Now, what can happen, Chris, like you said, the disruption of democracy, and, we hear this every day, foreign, adversarial countries are targeting us. They're invading our computers. They're doing this. They're doing that to the government, to every possible system. But they're also, getting out propaganda. They're interfering, and the marketers are too, even in our own elections, because one side or the other is paying. Anybody can pay to get into your newsfeed. And that's terrifying. And more terrifying, think about this. Meta has about half the world's population on their platforms. Half the world's population. On Facebook, about half of Facebook members get their news on Facebook. Now, who's in charge of what news they're seeing? Mm-hmm. Facebook.
Yeah.
So think about the filters that are being perpetrated on you, affecting how you see the world. Now, if for the example of Google searches, take it to Google, because this is so documented now, because Google was just found guilty of antitrust infringement in the United States of America. This is huge, everybody. Google has, can spend billions of dollars on lawyers to fight the case. They lost. They not only dominate the search industry, which we all know, and this doesn't work. Capitalism works beautifully until it turns into monopolism, when it becomes monopolies. Then it acts not in the interest of the customer, but in the interest of the company alone. So Google was found, they manipulate everything, they manipulate all your searches. So if you're searching for something, at the top of the search results is going to be a product or service or something that Google's connected to. Somebody paid Google to get it up there. or it's something that Google makes money on. So, I mean, the court case, it's just really stunning. It's like, wow, we knew it was bad, but we didn't know it was this bad because they were so good at discretion about it. And remember, Google had a mantra. For those of you who may remember now, it's 6 years ago they got rid of it. Do no evil. That was their mantra.
Yeah.
And in 2018, it kind of discreetly and quietly just disappeared from their ambiance. So, but here's what we got. We've got civil discourse at risk because as we see so much hate in our own country between one side or the other, Republicans and Democrats, MAGAs and not MAGAs, progressives and conservatives. This is unprecedented, everybody, because disagreement is actually the foundation of democracy. It's the backbone. We should be cherishing disagreement. We should appreciate our neighbor who has a different opinion than us and just go, well, cool, that's interesting to learn about, Instead, we're being salted and peppered so that we actually think we hate each other. No, we don't. We're being manipulated to do that. We're being manipulated so that democracy can get disrupted, civil discourse gets eroded, and we've got a problem, everybody.
Yeah, 100%. That also ties into this illusion of choice that we're being presented. All these corporations seem to be being absorbed into one entity, and anything that starts out beneficial is going to be bought out and then become part of this one corporate system. It's providing us this illusion that we have choices, Coke, Pepsi, between presidential candidates whenever we're being corralled into the same ideologies, but it's an illusion that we have this choice to choose from.
Well, and that's so interesting because let's talk about the premises of capitalism, because I'm a capitalist. I love capitalism. I'm an entrepreneur, obviously. And also today one of the world's leading technology thought leaders. On all the topics, published widely, from the Wall Street Journal to the LA Times, all different perspectives, Fox, Newsweek, you name it, Squawk Box was just on Squawk Box, just was in Forbes, because I took common sense. Because, but here's what we've got. We've got this complete manipulation. And the economic system called capitalism works perfectly, particularly in republics like ours with strict antitrust laws, because capitalism needs a free market. In other words, we must have the ability for entrepreneurs to enter the market and offer their products and services, find investors, of course, that's their job, build the product or service, that's their job. But we've got to make sure that they can do that. And what happens in capitalism without these sort of free market boundaries is that capitalism turns into monopolism. And that, Chris, is exactly what you just described. And in my book, everybody, remember this one because you're going to want to, it's Restoring Our Sanity Online. I'm going to talk about big ag, big energy, and big tech because there are fascinating parallels in the evolution of these sort of large sectors as they go from free market to monopolies, and then they squeeze out the free market, and then they stop functioning well, and then we're no longer the customer. Think about it. At Meta, at Google, who's the customer? The customer is the advertiser, the marketer, the political operative, the adversarial entity, whoever wants to target and manipulate you. What are you? You're the product.
Yes.
Right? And even on social media, even in big tech.
You can even see it in entertainment, in films, in movies. The propaganda slips into it all.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, everybody, it's actually not that hard to fix. This is the good news. This stuff is not that hard to fix. And if you're anti-government, I'm sorry, but, and I'm a libertarian, but the government must help. If the government just hadn't succeeded in a case that was started under Trump's first administration, that was prosecuted under Biden's administration. If the government hadn't succeeded, this is the first time really since the AT&T breakup. We're going back like decades since the government's had a really successful big case. I mean, we're screwed if the government doesn't succeed at this. And the government has a case against Meta now. It's been going on for years. A judge just set the trial date for April 14th, 2025. This is huge news. Meta has spent, countless millions of dollars trying to get that case thrown out. It's going to court. Now, here's the thing. If we can manage the free market, we can have an incredibly well-functioning capitalist society that supports democracy. And so we need the government for this. Okay, this is important. We also need the government to help our kids. Because, Chris, you talked about mental health. We need the government to help our kids. And it doesn't really matter what age you are, but if you've got a kid who's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, up to the age really about 25 or 30 right now. But if you know a kid who's under the age of 13 and they're on social media, and if you take a look at what they're able to see on YouTube, on TikTok, on Insta, the way people can access them on Facebook because they lie about their age.
Yeah, all you have to do is press a button. Yes, I'm over 21. It's that simple.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then from then on, the system recognizes you as being over 21 or over 13. Remember, Facebook is 13 and over. And they just, announced about a month ago or so some, new voluntary rules for Instagram. This is a joke. It's the same thing. So you get on Instagram, you're saying, I'm 21. And you could be 11 or 12 or 10 or 8 or 13 or 14. But then the system's just going to recognize you because it's all voluntary. So the government needs to help. We've got to make sure, and listen, this just happened in Australia. It's happening in places around the world right now. And, what is interesting, it looks like 16 may ultimately become the new normal for how old you are in order to get on social media. Curiously, MeWe, the last company I started, we launched that in 2016 after a several-year beta test, but we always made it 16. But we weren't about to create a database of your information with verification. So we didn't verify, but we asked our users to be 16 or over, because I think that's a pretty good, safe age to start on social media. Maybe at 18 and over, you could be targeted or you could allow your data to be used to target. So there's a lot of things here, but our kids, I mean, come on, the bullying, the body shaming and bullying don't just come from peers. They also come from people who are 50 or 40 or 30 pretending to be teenagers because they register and say they're a 14-year-old when they're a 50-year-old. The creeps are everywhere. And the bots and troll creeps are everywhere because they also know from nefarious entities that this is a way to disrupt democracy. Go after the next generation. Screw them up. Screw their heads up. So we've got a lot to do to make sure that kids are talking to kids and they're not getting creeped out. And also, the algorithm, which you mentioned earlier, the algorithms now are supercharged. So this is where AI comes in. Previously, even in 2012, when I was on, that interview on Fox, and I said, this is creepy. The day Facebook went public, I said, this is just creepy what they're doing. This algorithm that's really getting everything on you and then targeting you like that in nanoseconds. Well, now it really is nanoseconds because that algorithm had to be constantly refined by a human programmer who was updating it all the time. And then it would aggregate this information. And then it would now with AI gathering this information, AI can A/B test your brain in nanoseconds, which is why all of a sudden there's a new phenomenon. Never mind the kids. We all know older people now who can't get off social media. They're stuck on TikTok. They're stuck on X. This is because AI has now supercharged the targeting algorithm that gets content in your face that keeps you addicted. It knows exactly in a nanosecond how to get you not to put the phone down. It's unbelievable. This is so out of control.
Let's get a little deeper into some of this technology. You mentioned bots and some of the trolls that may not even be people, may be algorithm based. Tell us a little bit more about your understanding of this and maybe how to become aware of it better.
Very good. Thanks, man. Also, the book has an appendix on exactly how bots and trolls. Another thing, this is not complicated to get rid of. There's a catch-22. Social media companies need their bots and trolls because they boost the engagement. They boost their revenue. It's a real strange catch-22 because, first of all, and you look at a blue check on X, for example. Musk rolled out this blue check idea a couple of years ago, and he said, "Hey, you know what? This way we'll verify, and we'll help control the bots and trolls." But when it actually rolled out, it doesn't verify anything. Any bot or troll in a farm, and we call it a bot and troll farm, and a bot really is, basically a bot. A troll can be a person managing many of these accounts. But they all can be programmed to use a credit card number to get a blue check.
Right,
That's not hard.
Right.
Any programmer can do that. You can program, a million of them. And, that's easy. Any nefarious government can do that. So, and the idea of the blue check was your posts then get better visibility, get boosted, all that stuff. So, that's an idea that fell by the wayside when the revenue was apparent and when it became apparent that, X already has a big issue. It's documented, both for Biden and for Musk that somewhere between 50 and 70% of their followers are bots and trolls. So, but no one's doing anything about it, right? There's okay, those millions of followers, the number looks good. We got to keep it. So, but this is a very real factor. And so, listen, there's something that, for everybody, premise. I am one of the world's leading privacy advocates. I've been ranked that way. This is not me spouting. It's like I've been ranked consistently. I've been awarded by governments, also by ranking systems on the web. I've been against user verification systems for 15 years since somebody came up with the idea. On government committees, I joined government committees to push against this. But it's a new day. It's a new reality. So, first of all, we must protect anonymity for whistleblowers, marginalized people, etc. We've got to protect their anonymity. But on social media, just social media, they already know who we are anyhow. They're just not getting rid of the bots and trolls, but they already know who we are because the government knows who we are. Remember, we went through this. There's so much data. There was a Guardian reporter a few years ago who just acted as a consumer, wrote to Facebook, said, "I'd like to know, get my data that you have on me." They sent him 60,000 pages of data because you're allowed to request. 60,000 pages of data on one person.
Wow.
Because they know everything. They know when you pick your nose. I mean, really, here's the thing. These algorithms, supercharged AI, are so smart, they can anticipate your next thought. And then they can manipulate your next thought. That's creepy.
Very creepy.
So what we've got to do, everybody, is for social media, I have decided that to preserve our privacy and to save our data and to save our children and ourselves from being manipulated by, bots, trolls, weirdos, whatever, we've got to have user ID verification, which is just what the Australian government just decided. Now, I haven't studied their user ID verification system, but when user ID verification is done right, first of all, they already know who we are. Everybody born in America has a social security number. They already know who we are. So let's stop pretending. And on social media, I still believe we can have pseudonyms. No problem. You want a pseudonym? Great. But if you're a 12-year-old, you're not going to be on it if we have 13 as verification. And if you're 13, you're not going to be talking to a 50-year-old creep or a bot and troll pretending to be one. They won't be in the system. You'll be safe. Then we can manage the bullying and all these other things. You won't be targeted. There'll be no boosted content, no ads, no marketing. It'll be you, timeline order, connecting to, your friends, etc. So we've got to get there. We got to get there now. And for the rest of us on social media, it means when we're talking about, a political idea or, whatever it is, the environment or, energy or, fundamental issues, vaccines or women's right, whatever it is, that we'll be talking to real people. And the company they can use pseudonyms. I could use a pseudonym. I'm a big fan of pseudonyms because, you don't want to use your real name all the time everywhere. You don't want to be that transparent. But if you're breaking the terms and conditions, you're breaking the law, then the site knows. And if you're not a real person, then the site knows you're not going to be there. Social media.
Right.
This is one thing that we can do that governments are going to mandate. The Australian government just did. They just passed it. Very interesting and controversial for sure, because there's a lot of bots and trolls. This is going to threaten, millions, hundreds of millions of bots and trolls are going to get threatened by this. And some, good people who are concerned about the right to anonymity. Now, here's the thing. I'm a firm believer in the right to privacy and the right to anonymity in other arenas, whistleblowers, marginalized people, everybody should be protected, but not in social media. Let's just carve that out and go, okay, you want to be on social media, we got to make sure you're a real person so that we can save civil discourse, save democracy, save our kids, save our mental health and our kids' mental health, and get back to the beautiful thing, what social media is really designed for, which is connectivity, which is really, enhancing, the human family. And us, it can be very nurturing when you're connected in timeline order, where an algorithm isn't deciding if you should see your grandmother's post or this outrageous post from a troll, which is going to engage you more. Well, the heck with grandma. They're going to stick that troll post in front of you if the algorithm is running it. So let's go to news, timeline, news feeds. It works great. Anyway, there's a piece.
That's
for
great.
you.
Well, while we're on solutions, what are your thoughts on the disturbing trends in AI art, deep fakes, and some of the deceptions that people are getting sucked into with this, especially with everything that's happened in the past few years? There's more and more people just questioning everything, looking for answers, and it's become difficult to sift through the nonsense online because of this very thing. The not only alteration of information, but now they can just make pictures and videos of anything they want just by typing in a prompt, and it's becoming so real looking that it's difficult for some people to tell the difference, and this seems to be causing problems in certain areas, especially with misinformation about very important things.
This is a huge problem. Again, it's now people can do this. Remember, there's still plenty of people in the world who have a lot of time on their hands, and for entertainment, they get on the web and they'll, with the advent of AI, you can say to AI, make me a video of a 2027 Corvette with a 1,500 horsepower engine. Make it look real, like it came from Chevrolet. And boom, and then it gets on the web, it catches a wave. Before you know it, Chevrolet has to make announcements. No, that's not us. It's not real. Now there's ways. So you have to listen. Now, we shouldn't have to do this, but right now you have to pay attention. You have to watch. You have to listen. Everything that you see, you have to then look for a credible source, a credible news outlet reporting the same thing, a credible source, whether, it's Fox or, PBS or, whatever your outlet is, but a mainstream credible source, CNN, whoever. I'm calling out different sides, but the mainstream outlets, so that you can verify instead of just watching a deep fake and going, oh, and then you look at where's that deep fake showing up, and you're like, oh, it's not showing up anywhere. But, in my newsfeed. So, and then, the problem is that it circulates so much before it gets flagged. because things spread like wildfire on the web, and then they're paid to spread like wildfire on the web. So you've got to get really good. You can watch a deepfake, and you can watch the facial expressions. You can listen for the flatlining of the tone. You can listen for things that don't sound human. You can listen for certain words that are misphrased because it's a bot reading it, and they don't know the nuance of the word. When you hear, you've got to get your antenna up while working through this. Now, there are ways in the future, and these are coming, to watermark, fake content, and for systems to be able to identify the content. Because remember, with all this AI can get right back to wherever the source of that content is, and can flag it immediately. Where was it generated? Where's where was it birthed? So remember, AI is also going to be the good guy here. We need AI to fight AI, which is going to be really interesting. So we got good AI versus bad AI. It's going to be cat and mouse for a while, but we've got to get to this because this is also very disruptive, and it causes listen, it can cause riots, it can cause all kinds of problems can happen before something is flagged as being false. Now, in the future, and in the book, in Restoring Our Sanity Online, I'm going to talk in the book at 3 chapters on Web3. And I'm also going to talk about Web 4. Because for most of you, Web 3, you don't even know what that means anyhow. What the heck is Web 3? And does it work? And is it for me? And when's it ever going to come? Because we've heard about Web 3 for a while. And really, if I ask 100 people in the room, what's Web 3? I'm going to get 100 different answers. And I'm going to get most people putting up their hands and saying, I really don't know. So for everybody, very simply, Web 3 is built on blockchain and functions mostly through wallets that transact cryptocurrencies. Now, it was a big idea for social media, amongst other things. The blockchain, by the way, works well for fintech and for some other things. And also, just to quickly get rid of a myth, blockchain doesn't give you any anonymity. So don't think that blockchains give you anonymity, because you are totally connected to anything you do forever. So that's actually a very interesting aspect of blockchain. Blockchain also doesn't work well as a building block for high participation, high membership social media. It's too clunky, it's too slow, it's too expensive. It's all wrong, even though visionaries have been working on having a breakthrough in that for years. And Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web, threw in the towel 2 years ago. Said, forget it. Blockchain just doesn't work for social media. But move on, then. We've got to move on. And the idea of cryptocurrency, there's another problem with Web3, if you've heard about Web3 and social media. And that is that on a large scale, above, let's say, 10 to 50 million people, once you get above that, people don't want to do it, because Web3 is really based on commercializing your relationships. In other words, the monetization scheme and the moderation scheme are all about upvoting and downvoting. There's all different ways that you can either get a piece of cryptocurrency or give a fragment of cryptocurrency to a friend or to somebody or a content provider, or a creator. And human beings don't want to monetize their relationship. This is almost like the last frontier, right? And it's been proven because there have been social media companies built in Web3 since 2017, 2018. They never get more than about 1 million active users. So, it's just not going to work, and we need a better system. So in the book, I'm going to bring you to Web 4, and we're going to talk about what really is going to work great. And I'm not going to throw everything, we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're going to take the best, and we're going to innovate. And some of these things are really straightforward, and data portability is coming. So you'll be able to download your data off of Facebook. If you don't like it, move it to somebody who's built a product you love, and your friends are going to be able to come there with you. Because until now, we're stuck in what's called the network effect. And you all know it. You might have found a site you love that's cool, and you think it's really like the next cutting edge thing, and it also respects you and takes care of your privacy and all that stuff, but nobody comes with you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's called the network effect. We're all stuck on Meta because their family is there and their friends are there. It's more than just you taking them. It's more than just you taking your family, because then they have their people. It's the network effect. That's what happens to monopoly. Imagine if you can just download your data in a perfectly organized packet. If you're controlling it, you're actually uploading it and downloading it. Nobody has access to your data, and then you could just move it somewhere else. And therefore, everybody can. That's the free market. Tim Berners-Lee has invented a system for that, a really great protocol called Solid Pods, along with a solid wallet, so that your identification can be managed and your money can be managed inside of a very protected pod that you control. It's not controlled by the big guys. It's not up in a centralized server system. So the future is actually really exciting, Chris. Really exciting.
Well, how should we approach the increasing problem of censorship and infringement on our free speech, especially when dealing with these platforms? I do this for a living. I have been affected by censorship on multiple platforms. Do you think there's a way to get out of the situation and where we're headed with this right now?
It's very interesting, this question. And, as a free market person, I also believe that sites have the right to make their own terms and conditions inside of the federal laws, if not state laws, that protect kids, and things like that. So, if this is why we need the free market working, so that it's not controlled by big tech that just blocks you out, for example, but that there are many choices for you and for me and for everybody, so that, one guy, says, oh, you know what, I only want this kind of, these are my rules. Here are my terms and conditions. And another site says, here are my terms and conditions. And, the First Amendment protects their right to do that also, while it protects your right to say what you want to say. It's interesting. The First Amendment protects both. So this is, again, where we must break the stranglehold of the monopolies and get back to a high-functioning free market, which, is the most effective way for capitalism to function anyhow. So that's what we've got to do, because, we really don't want to regulate how a site moderates you. That's as bad as censorship, because then what happens when an administration changes? It's like, wait a minute, this is going to get messy. That's the slippery slope we want to avoid. And at the same time, we want to make sure that you have good outlets. Everybody has, if there's market demand, that the free market works so that you or somebody else can create the app where, you can reach everybody you want to reach. Right now, it's all closed, it's all shut down. Look at, just look at all the big ones, guys, right? You always know when there's monopolies in play, because, you just look at how long the big guy's been there. Now, keep in mind, everybody, tech moves fast. So, we've got, but it slowed down. So now if we've got 10 years, we've got 15 years of, Facebook is 20 years, right? And we've got WhatsApp, and we've got Snap, and we've got Insta, and of course, WhatsApp, and Insta and Facebook are all Meta. Because Facebook was Facebook, then it bought Insta, then it bought WhatsApp. WhatsApp was a great, encrypted, app that was used around the world. But, people weren't paying attention when Meta bought it. And Meta said, okay, look, we're going to track you. We're going to take every piece of data we can. They changed their privacy policies. I wrote about this in 2016, the first time they did it. Nobody was paying attention. Eventually the WhatsApp guys, billionaires that they are, resigned from Meta, just like the Instagram guys did. They resigned, billionaires that they are, but they couldn't, tolerate in their own conscience what happened to their users and their users' data. So, by the way, if you're using encrypted apps today, I highly recommend that you move over to Signal, or Telegram, because WhatsApp is, as they state, they know who you're talking to, they know where you are, they know when you're talking to them, they know everything except the conversation on the inside.
Speaking
But they know
speaking
plenty.
of Telegram, have you heard anything lately about the state of the legal situation that's going on with Telegram right now?
I haven't followed that case particularly closely in France. But I understand there have been some, first it seemed quite harsh, then it seemed maybe there's some cooperation. Basically my rule of thumb is go to Signal. It's a nonprofit. It's got, a great team behind it. I just don't want to get too immersed in it. I purposely sort of stay away from the politics of what's going on with Telegram. I think Signal is just, they've got their nose clean. They started for the right reasons. They carefully created their operations as a non-for-profit so that, they're run properly. I think that's the best place to be if you're going to do encrypted, conversations.
Now, let's look at a positive side of some of this. In one of your chapters, you discuss how social media can be actually good for our mental health. Tell us a little bit about that.
Listen, everybody, this is the whole point, right? Now, I love social media. I love it. I mean, I'm one of the guys who invented this thing. It's like, wow, what a brilliant idea. We're spread out around the world, and if family members can be everywhere. We can work from anywhere. And we could 30 years ago, too. Now more than ever. So the whole idea of social media is connection, staying connected. Now, if we can stay connected without being addicted to the app because we're being manipulated, without having our thoughts and opinions manipulated, where we're just really connected to family, friends, and like-minded people we're choosing to connect with. And if we, check a box where we want content from this source or that source or this source or that source, where we know where it's coming from. So, it's really just common sense, right? Then social media, as it was in the past, Web 1, it's actually really good for us, really good for the world. It brings the world together, makes the world a more cohesive place. It gives us connectivity with our loved ones that, we got chat and we got email back in the 90s, but this is so much better. I mean, look, we got FaceTime, right? Which is incredible. We have ways to stay connected. And social media uses, look, we've got these dual cameras. We've got these stories we can create. I mean, we're all artists now. We can follow our favorite, creators. Whether, you're a Swiftie or whoever you are. I mean, this is really a lot of fun. And here's the asterisk. If you're a parent, you've got to keep, there's a lot of rules here because kids aren't healthy. There's a guy, Jonathan Haidt, his book's on my desk somewhere, The Anxious Generation. Kids, the data is the kids are on their phones 5 to 7 hours a day. Got to get their phones out of everybody's bedroom, including yours if you're an adult. You got to have a cutoff point. Everybody's phone is charging somewhere away from the bedroom. Never have a phone in the bedroom at night. It's like, you go to bed, boom, phone's out. You need an alarm, turn on an alarm clock. Get your phone out of the room because you wake up in the middle of the night, you're going to look at it. And there's so many studies that confirm that if your phone is around you, it interferes with your sleep. Look, school kids are all sleep deprived now. There's tons of research on this. So it's also like no phones at the dinner table. These are just basics. And I'm a techie. But you know what? We sit down to dinner, you sit down to dinner with your family, phone's out. If you've got a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old or an infant, please don't give them a phone to pacify them. I know moms and dads are crazy busy. You know what? Put up with a little bit of noise and find, let them flip a book or let them be entertained by a toy or a stuffy or something. Once they learn there's no phone at the table, they'll never bother you again. My kids never have. It's just from the beginning. And Sweden has just said no screen for any kid under 2.
Oh, wow.
No screen.
Nice.
No television screen, no phone. But here's why, everybody. The screen is addictive. We know this. Even if you're older, look, I grew up with televisions and telephones, right? Mm-hmm. So if you didn't grow up with Facebook, but you still grew up with televisions and telephones, and our parents had to regulate that stuff because otherwise we would have been on the phone all the time. We would have watched TV all the time. It's no different. We got to regulate. Yes, we're busy. If you find it convenient because you're so overwhelmed that you stick a phone or an iPad or something in front of your kid, you're actually harming the kid and yourself because you're going to make your parenting harder for the next 25 years than you could even imagine. And I mean the next 25 years because you're going to create addictions for your kids that are going to create huge frustrations for you and problems for them with concentration and everything else.
Well, you said something very important earlier that I agree with, and I think that we are indeed in an era of opportunity for people who are starting their own businesses, who have the technological know-how to be creative online and make a living and do things that are not only beneficial for the collective, but things that make you feel good about what you're doing. And we have more and more people making their own movies, starting their own companies from the ground, starting their own content creation, independent media outlets. So it's a very exciting time for the regular person to be able to do incredible things because we have access to this technology. The unfortunate thing is there's many that believe that these tech giants are too big to fail and there is no way to get around some of the ideologies and traps that we've been introduced to. And many people believe that it's impossible to get from under the thumb of these big tech giants, but I think it's happening slowly and we're seeing it unfold before our eyes. It's just not happening at a pace where we could truly notice it collectively, but I do think that slowly but surely there's more and more people who are starting from the bottom and making the changes that will affect everything for the future.
It's the Wild West still because tech is a baby. So, the fact that we are able to be looking at all these problems right now, just, 30 years into it and really 20 years since Facebook started, and 17 years since Facebook became, a significant, part of our world. It's a fascinating time. The government is catching up. Remember, the white-haired guys in the government 20 years ago had never used a technology platform. Many of them didn't even know how to use email. So fast forward to today, and the white-haired guys in government now all at least understand tech. So, and many of them now grew up with some kind of tech, because like we said, there was email in the 90s. So if they're white-haired guys today, but they were 20 or 30 in the 90s, then, they're here. They're with us. They're understanding. Look at Tim Cook. Look at some of the senior executives. He's not a young guy. Jobs wouldn't be young today. So we've got a big opportunity for and a breeding ground for the next great ones. Now, Chris, you said something earlier that I don't want to step over. And, this aspect of if you become successful, then you're going to get bought out. And then, that's the monopolies happen. Now, getting bought out is okay, everybody, because, we're entrepreneurs. We live in capitalism. And if you track the inevitability of a successful entity, unless you're keeping it to hand it down generation to generation, there comes a time as your success grows and grows where you become attractive to a larger fish that wants to gobble you up. Now, in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with that as long as the government is watching to make sure that the largest supermarket chain in the country doesn't buy the second largest supermarket chain in the country and create a massive monopoly where they control all the prices of everything from, production to, sale to your table. So that's okay. This idea of, acquisition of being acquired, that's a good thing to aspire to if that's your goal, or to create franchise opportunities or whatever it is, to create a new technology. Now, also for creators. Now, one of our challenges around the creator environment, in the book, I'm going to totally empower creators. This book is really about the creator economy, restoring our sanity online. Totally about the creator economy. So, and B Corps, which we know are, very, giving back, sharing with shareholders, users, everybody. Also, I'm going to talk about user advisory boards. I'm going to talk about, jury of your peers for censorship. We're going to talk about things that are really actually pretty straightforward to implement so that users are empowered while the executive team can run the company. This is really conscious capitalism at work. And listen, they're great companies. Salesforce, Southwest, Container Store, Patagonia. They're huge companies, Whole Foods, all these great companies that, are either B Corps or conscious capitalism corporations. And this is all about doing well by doing good. And the data shows that actually the more ethical you are about how you do your business, the more compassionate, with fellow humans, the better you do. Called doing well by doing good. Raj Sisodi, the co-founder of Conscious Capitalism, which has chapters around the world, like 200 countries now. Raj endorsed this book, and he said every business executive has to read this book. So there's a whole methodology here for how we transform business on the web.
You mentioned how it's essentially the wild, wild west online right now. Are you optimistic that it will eventually tame itself and become something more beneficial to humanity?
Well, I say it's the Wild West is what it's becoming. It was the Wild West at the beginning, Web 1, which is all about serving humanity, because the premise of capitalism is come up with a great product or service that serves and delights people, so your customers love it, and you'll be successful. Then it quickly folded into monopolies. Facebook becomes successful, for example. Then they get funded with hundreds of millions of dollars. Then nobody else can get funded because and then they acquire or squeeze out of business all their competitors. This is well documented, etc. So what we want is to get back to the Wild West of you have a good idea and you've got good business acumen and you want to go for it, you can figure out how to do it. And no one's going to say to you, no, Facebook, Google, sorry, they own that space. You're never going to have any luck. So we want a bit of that. And then the sanity, it's interesting, the sanity is part of that sort of insanity, that free market working. But then the companies that do it right are going to be successful. And remember, that's the idea. What we need is at the top line, we need the government managing antitrust regulation. And it's possible, by the way, with the incoming administration, we might see some movement. Listen, there are bills, the American Privacy Rights Act, APRA, the Kids Online Safety Act, COSA, COPA 2, Child Online Privacy Protection Act. I mean, there are things in Congress with bipartisan support that, if you look at President Trump's historical perspectives, that he may very well support. We may very well get the things across the finish line. America is the only country in the G20 that doesn't have a privacy rights legislation for every American. We're the only country that doesn't have that. It's time to fix these things.
Mark, this was great information. Thank you so much. Before we close out, remind everybody the best way that they can find out more about you and pick up your book.
Everybody, thank you for listening. And I know you're not, the whole point of this conversation, remember, I'm not expecting you to agree or disagree with everything that we talked about today. I want us to be talking about it. I want us to be empowered. I want you to feel powerful again about your choices on social media and about your control. That's what it's all about. The book, Restoring Our Sanity Online, A Revolutionary Social Framework, is available wherever books are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, you name it. Walk into a bookstore, and if you can't find it, just order it. And if you really love it, please get a second one and give it to somebody, a library, a school, a friend. We've got to get everybody back on the same page going, oh, wow, I can do this. Also, in the book, there are action plans in almost every chapter. What you can do right now, spotting a bot and troll, not being fished, taking care of your kids, working together, getting all this done. It's all there. What we can do right now, and there's some appendices on how we fix a lot of things. You can reach me, Mark, M-A-R-K, at restoretheweb.com, mark at restoretheweb.com. You can go to my website, markweinsteininventor.com. It's MarkWeinstein, inventor.com. So, and again, we can do this. We're doing it. It's a very exciting time, and we're going to get this done. So I want everybody to feel like, okay, we've now seen how bad it can get. Now let's get it back. Our mental health, kids' mental health, civil discourse, critical thinking, democracy. This is all right in our hands to make it work better for all of us and for future generations. Take our privacy back, control our data, and if you think it's too late for your privacy, don't worry, it's too late for mine too. But it's not too late for our kids and their kids. It's not too late to start right now. We take our data back, control of our data, using Tim's pods or something similar. We've got privacy again.
Mark, great information. Thank you again. Definitely love to talk more in the future. I'll have all your links easily accessible for everyone right in the description. And until next time, everyone, have a wonderful evening. We will talk again tomorrow. We'll see you then.